This Week in Radio Tech, episode 247, brought to you by Lavo and the new Crystal Clear virtual radio console. Crystal Clear is the radio console with a multi-touch touchscreen interface. By the new Omnia 7 FM, HD, and streaming audio processor with Undo technology. Omnia 7 is a mid-priced audio processor with the sound and features you love. And by Axia Pathfinder routing control and monitoring software. Pathfinder powerfully controls your LiveWire AOIP network. Norway's National Communications Authority has calculated and measured the coverage of DAB Plus networks across Norway and found that they now surpass the existing FM coverage there. So now, Norway is ready to shut down the FM ban. And Chris Tobin and I discuss online public files and the dangers of ice on towers. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech. It's time to do that weekly talk, that talk where we talk about, broadcast engineering, radio, audio engineering, RF, IT, all the things that just go into delivering audio programming to millions and millions and millions of listeners. Our show is in its 247th episode here, and it's also brought to you by the folks at Lavo and the Crystal Clear console, brought to you also by the folks at Omnia and the new Omnia 7 audio processor now shipping, and the folks at Axia and Axia Pathfinder. Very powerful stuff, and we'll tell you all about those during the course of the show. All right, as usual, with us is our very trusty co-host, Chris Tobin, the best-dressed engineer in radio. And today, where are you? Oh, I don't know if you can say where you are. You may have stolen a studio somewhere.
No, I haven't stolen a studio because I intend to return it at the end of the show. So therefore, it's not theft. It's a temporary use of someone's facilities. And the facilities I'm at are WORAM 710 here in New York City, part of the iHeart radio group. I'm at the iHeart radio facility in Lower Manhattan. So in the former AT&T Long Lines building.
Cool. I have been there, met with our mutual friend, Josh Haddon. And in fact, I think sitting on the desk next to you there, you've got a Telos VSET phone system because I was there along with Joe Talbot, and we helped put that VX system in.
Yep.
Yeah. So the studio that you're in, do they use that on air? I guess they do.
Yes, for the morning show, I think with Len Berman. I think Len Berman's the morning show guy, yeah. Okay. Yeah, one of the producers just popped in to find out what was going on, and he was taking pictures. I'm like, I don't think you understand. This is not anything to do with you guys. He's like, that's okay. You're using our studio.
A few times on the show, we have mentioned the building that you're in. It's popped up here and there. And would you spend just a minute and tell us the significance of this building from a telephony point of view, and then, and if you don't mention the other thing, I'll prompt you for it. But from a telephony point of view, so it's the AT&T building. Why is that significant?
Well, it dates back to the AT&T long lines, long distance, and this was where all the cables came back and all the connections were made, both transatlantic ocean connections and across the country. Building was built purposely to facilitate and accommodate the communications of the day. It was built it's a bit above the subway, which is interesting. So you actually have access to the subway directly in the building. But this is where AT&T had their headquarters for long distance and many communications pathways, not just long distance. And then over time, they started renting out space to other carriers when the laws changed for deregulation. So you had Sprint, MCI, and others sharing space. So it became a carrier hotel, as the phrase is used. So this was yeah, that's what it's known as. 60 Hudson Street is the other one that's active. But here I think there's about a half a dozen other carriers in this building that provide all types of internet services. It's a very busy building. There's a lot of high-tech stuff going on. But AT&T is not doing this stuff.
So AT&T is not there actively with offices, but do they have equipment there?
Last time I asked that question, I was told no. But then I was given a certain look, so they might.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah, I was like, okay, I'm not going to go down that road because I've worked with a few of those different departments, and it's okay, I get it.
But if you made let's say here I am in Nashville, Tennessee, and at least years ago, if I were to call someone over, one relative over in Germany, my call would likely have gone right through that building.
Yes. And they had operators in this building and switchboard control and everything, and then slowly over time things became automated, but yeah.
Now, I remember the lobby. I didn't get to spend more than 30 seconds in the lobby because we had to hustle and, get onto the elevator and go somewhere. But the lobby of that building is absolutely gorgeous. Would you give us a little taste of what it looks like?
The lobby, I got to remember it now because I did take pictures a while back. The lobby of this building is similar to many other AT&T building lobbies. Even the central office lobbies look this way. They're Art Deco, a lot of the style of the 30s, 20s, and there are maps on the wall. They talk about the radio lines. They show parts of the world map and connectivity. If you could just picture radio towers being used for telephone connections, it's just and symbols of all types of stuff for telecommunications back in the day. It is a truly spectacular view in a lobby just to walk in. It's like, wow, marble and the mosaics and the gold trim. I mean, it's just amazing.
Maybe I'm romanticizing it, but I thought I remember seeing brass men with thunderbolts,
Those are the
across the
symbols.
Atlantic or something. Yeah.
That's correct. That is correct. That would be, I think, was it Mercury? No, what was the symbol? If you go to the AT&T Global Network Operations Center in New Jersey, that's all I will tell you. In the front of the building, there's a huge statue with a similar symbol, and I forget that was the symbol for AT&T's internal stuff. I think it's Mercury, or somebody with the lightning bolt wings on his shoes.
It's also the guy. It's also the guy who will get you if you don't pay your bill.
That too, yes. No ticky, no laundry. That's it.
All right. Well, that's a class. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I said that just as the saying goes: no ticky, no laundry.
Yeah. Yeah.
No payment, no dial tone.
It's a no payment, no dial tone. Well, it's a classic building, and boy, I tell you what, there's been millions and millions and millions of calls routed through that building. So I'm glad there's a Telos VX phone system there now connected via SIP. Session Initiation Protocol, voice over IP. So that's all cool. So on our show today, let me give you a little preview. We've got a few subjects to talk about and some finish up work on a subject we had started on a previous show. One of the things that we're going to talk about, and we'll get to it here right after this quick break, and that is that Norway is shutting down all of its analog FM transmitters. Now, I don't know. I mean, so the FM band in Norway, I don't know what their plans are for the future. Chris, maybe you can study up on that real quick while I'm doing a commercial. But they're shutting off all the analog FM transmitters, and that's because their DAB, digital audio broadcasting, rollout has gotten to the point where they said, you know what, when it reaches this point, we're going to shut off analog, free up that space. So we'll be talking about that here in just a minute. Right now, I want to tell you about one of our sponsors, and that is Lavo. Now, Lavo is a console company. You may or may not have heard of Lavo. They're known. Hey, if you go to any NAB show or the IBC show or Broadcast Asia, you'll see Lavo has a booth. They have these huge audio consoles. Being in radio, I don't usually stop by their booth because it looks like that stuff's not for me. Well, guess what? They've taken at Lavo. They've taken their experience in building these really big, expensive, and very capable consoles and putting that work into some smaller radio consoles. So they have a line of consoles called the Crystal line, and they have turned that into the Crystal Clear console. This is just an amazing little audio console for your radio station. It is what they call a virtual radio mixing console. And that means it uses the same mixing engine and audio input-output ports as their Crystal console. But instead of having a physical surface in front of you with faders that move up and down, it's done virtually on a touch screen. In fact, it's a multi-touch screen. So if you go to their website and check this thing out, it's at Lavo, LAWO.com, and look for radio consoles, and then look for the Crystal Clear. This might really appeal to you if this appeals to you. Okay. Now the console, as far as mixing and inputs and outputs, it's exactly what you'd expect a small but capable audio console to have. It has like 24 inputs available, some mics, some analog stereo line inputs, some AES inputs. It also offers Ravenna and AES67 audio over IP inputs and outputs. And then it has some outputs too, like analog and AES and Ravenna and AES67. So it's compatible with other gear that is AES67 capable. But as any small console might have, it's got, program one bus, program two, a record bus. You can do dedicated recordings while the console is also on the air. If you need to, cut a quick commercial, a voice track, do an interview, things like that, and not have that on the air at that time. Precision stereo PPM meters. It supports talking to a guest privately, and the guest can talk back to the operator. So it's got that little bit of kind of like intercom capability between a guest and the board operator. Advanced DSP for mics and external sources, which means you can do a little bit of audio processing and some very nice parametric EQ on mic sources. Their time of day clock, of course, synchronizable to NTP. All these things that you would expect. As far as the touchscreen interface, maybe we could get Andrew to show that again. It lives on this multi-touch touchscreen console, and so you can just touch the faders on the screen, on the multi-touch touchscreen, and just move those faders up and down. You can touch the buttons, the options buttons, the mute, just select a different source to listen to, like you would on a real hard physical console. It's all there. There's also a video on the product page for this that we've been showing, and that video is Michael Dosh, and he's demonstrating at last year's NAB. He's demonstrating how this console works, talking about it. So not during this show, but right after the show, if you're interested in the Lavo Crystal Clear console, go to that webpage, go to lavo.com, LAWO, and look for the Crystal Clear radio mixing console and watch that video with Mike Dosh and learn about how this thing works. Really cool. And because it's AOIP with Ravenna and AES67, it's compatible with, well, all the other worldwide products that are now implementing AES67 or had already implemented Ravenna. Lavo, thank you very much for your sponsorship of this portion of This Week in Radio Tech. All right, Chris, Norway, shutting off FM transmitting. Well, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. Apparently, according to an article, the DAB plus signals reached 99% of the population, as opposed to the 93% that the FM analog reach. I guess they're of the mindset that it's, the digital system is now much better placed or poised to serve the communities of Norway. And that's what they're looking to do, is probably just retire the frequencies. There's no mention of what they're going to do with the FM frequencies. But the DAB Plus uses AAC audio coding. It can be used as low as 64 kilobits. I'm not sure what they're doing for standard data rate for transmissions. And it's not compatible with the DAB. So what they're doing is DAB progressive programming. I guess they got programming that can be injected into DAB Plus, but you can't use a DAB receiver to decode DAB Plus.
Yeah. We should explain that, at least as far as our knowledge. Because U.S. is not a DAB country. We thought about it many years ago, and I'm glad we didn't get locked into the original DAB. But in Great Britain, they have the original DAB, digital audio broadcasting, and that broadcasting uses the MPEG Layer 2 codec, and apparently it's not flexible. Because, well, one reason is the radios that were built for DAB, the original DAB, those radios don't have any other codecs built into them. And this stuff typically is codec on a chip. You can't just do a software upgrade to a $99 DAB radio. So they're stuck with what they have. Whereas for the last 10 years or so, other countries around the world that have been looking at, do we just continue with analog? Do we do HD radio? Do we do DAB, or do we do this new DAB plus? Seems most of those have been going with DAB plus, because then you do get other audio codecs available. And the benefit there, if I'm not mistaken, you correct me, Chris, is that MPEG Layer 2 sounds okay, maybe at 128 kilobits. It was designed for 256 kilobits for stereo. But you try to fit more channels in, more audio channels, like the satellite radio companies have done, and you get down to a bit rate that's just doesn't produce acceptable audio to a lot of people. And DAB Plus can use these newer codecs like AAC and high efficiency AAC. And so then you can get down to a low bit rate in the 56 kilobit range or even 48 kilobit range, and have entertainment quality audio that's not irritating. It actually sounds pretty good. So that's kind of where they're stuck. And I'm glad Norway said, you know what, we don't have to be compatible with Great Britain. We're going to go ahead and move ahead to DAB plus, and sorry if you come over from Great Britain, too bad your radio won't work here, but buy a DAB plus radio. Am I am I hitting that nail on the head right there?
Yeah. MPEG
Okay.
2, as we know it, is the packets, the blocks are designed in such a way that if you get down below 128 or below 64 kilobits, it just doesn't work. It's not a bad thing. It was the state of the art technology at the time, but
Yeah.
codecs have improved since then. Yeah, DAB plus is HEAAC version 2. And also they're using Reed-Solomon error correction. So Reed-Solomon error correction, which is used by satellite companies and other stuff, is very robust. I think they call it interpacket, right? It's interwoven with the packets. So it creates a very robust error correction. So you can really start, if you want, squeeze packets together and get a lot of channels in a confined space. Unlike the older version of DAB, which uses ECC, I think they called it. It's something they used to use on hard drives, which is a whole different approach to error correction, which works, but doesn't have the ability to scale down as much as you'd like. So one of the reasons why Reed-Solomon was used for a lot of satellite distribution and satellite coding because of its flexibility.
I would guess that a country like Norway, which how big is Norway? That it's less than the size of Georgia, I think. Our state of Georgia in the U.S.
It might be. I did not pick it up.
I mean, it's not. It'd be a lot tougher to have the whole U.S. Switch over. Cut off analog. Although someday that will probably end up being the case. I'm just looking something up here. They have just okay. Looks like they're going to have a switch off date. January 2017 is the latest here that I've heard. And then they've decided to go, hey, we've met the condition. It says here the coverage for absolute FM shutdown is that NRK, now that's the public broadcaster, they need to achieve 99.5% coverage, and the commercial broadcasters on the national network are required to reach 90% of the population. So there's actually a difference there. They want the public broadcaster run by the government to reach almost absolutely everybody, and commercial guys have to reach 90%. And now that has been met. So now they've met the conditions that they previously set for that. Well, that's pretty interesting. I really am going to be curious as to what they're going to do with the spectrum. And in fact, I was chatting online the other day with James Cridland. You might remember we had him on the show, maybe a year or so ago. And he was talking about digital broadcasting around the world, particularly in the UK. That's where he's from. So we'll get James back on the show. He agreed to come back on, and he can fill us in more on this. But I think this is newsworthy just because it's like, wow, somebody, Norway, has gone ahead and done this, and it's popular enough. DAB plus, and they can actually free up the spectrum. Hard to see how that would work anytime soon in the U.S. And of course we have HD radio here in the U.S. We're not going the DAB route. Chris, you want to kind of contrast maybe politically or technically, how some countries have gone that DAB route and how the U.S. has gone the HD radio route? Has to do probably with vested interest in signal coverage areas?
Well, it's definitely vested interest in signal coverage areas, because back in the day, I remember in early conversations and articles you would read, and if you went to various engineering society meetings, the biggest complaint, the largest concern was, if I'm a group owner and I have several stations of 50,000 watts currently on FM or even AM, but we'll just go for FM right now, and now all of a sudden the marketplace has several other carriers on this one big fat signal that's being put out as digital. Those guys who are now 3,000 watt stations or 25,000 watt stations are now equal to me. And basically what happened was I think the larger groups didn't like the idea of the competition encroaching on them, so they stifled it. That's what it came down. I remember those conversations distinctly in lots of meetings and in forums and stuff. And it makes sense because if I'm so and so and I own several dozen stations across the country, and all of a sudden the marketplace shifts to 6 competitors, and now with digital it goes to 22, I'm going to be a little annoyed.
Yeah.
I think that's part of what drove things crazy. And the other part is, here in the United States, everything is independent. It's not like in parts of the world where it's dictated by either the government or dictated by the societies that have been built around borders. In Europe, every country is its own. In the United States, every state is its own, but there's a certain understanding and cooperation across state lines in order to make things business worthy, commercial, even with public radio.
It is interesting in these smaller countries, European countries, some Asian countries, Middle Eastern countries, where the state-run broadcaster is like it's the gorilla in the room, right?
Yep,
Uh,
yep.
and and they're going to do what they're going to do, and then the commercial broadcasters are going to need to follow along with that. Now, it doesn't work like that everywhere, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It is kind of good when you have somebody say instead of letting the market decide is usually the way I lean, but hey, we let the market decide on AM stereo, and it didn't get picked up anywhere. Now, it may have been doomed to not get picked up anywhere, no matter if it was mandated one way or another. But to have the state broadcaster, in this case, Norway's NCOM, to have them say, here's what we're going to do, and here are the parameters for us shutting off our FM transmitters, then it becomes an easy goal for the commercial broadcasters to follow along. So just interesting the way we set standards, and that's one of the benefits of them. There are so many of them, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
All right, we're going to move on to a different subject, and that is something called the Infinite Dial webinar. Let me tell you a little bit about a press release here. Edison Research and Triton Digital. Triton is a large content distribution network. They're going to present their Infinite Dial webinar coming up March 4th at 2 p.m. I guess that's Eastern time, following an annual study of consumer media habits. Now, it's hosted by Edison VP of Strategy Tom Webster and Triton Digital COO Mike Agavino. The webinar is going to focus on new developments in streaming audio, radio, podcasting, mobile technology, and social media, according to the Edison Research website. The study's been conducted for 23 years and has included behaviors and usage of technology and media platforms since 1998. By the way, registration is open right now. We can put the link to that in our show notes today. Pre-registration is required for this webinar. Now, what I'm a little confused about, or maybe Chris, you can help define it for us, is what do they mean when they say infinite dial? Does that mean that all media become equally accessible, or do you have a notion of what they mean by this infinite dial?
I'm guessing that basically everything is available. If you use the thinking of an analog dial or a dial, radio dial as we know it, and just now no longer has a limitation to 88 to 108 or 530 to 1710, it just keeps going. That would be my thinking. You have an IP radio on your tabletop and you just spin a dial and just keep going through all the assignments that there are out there based on a directory. I mean, that's my interpretation. I could be totally wrong, but that's what I'm thinking.
Some of this here, I'll pass along some information from an article, What's Playing on Those Earbuds from infinitedial.com. It's hard to believe that it was only 8 years ago that Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone in his famous speech. The revolution that seems to be changing everything is, of course, rapidly changing audio usage as well. It certainly has mine. It seems that almost everywhere one goes, one will see someone with earbuds on, tuned out from the world. Edison's share of ear study allows us to understand just what kind of audio is being consumed. There's a graph, you can't see it, but I can, which shows what platform of audio is being consumed on mobile devices, which could also include tablets or iPods, MP3 players. Large majority owned music. That's what's playing on people's earbuds. Internet-only audio, like Pandora, Spotify. And then you have podcasts. AM and FM accounting for only 7% of consumption on mobile devices, and Sirius XM accounting for 2% of consumption on mobile devices, according to Edison Research share of ear study from the fall of 2014. So owned music, 52%, over half, and internet-only audio at 35%. Now, that's on mobile devices. Chris, is that what you would expect? Owned music about half, internet-only about a third, podcasts 4%, and AM/FM only 7%. Does that sound about right for mobile devices?
Yeah, I would think so. I think what we all forget is over time, I mean, technology will always evolve, just as cars did and light bulbs do and everything else in our world and life as we know it evolves. Even the hardwood floors that we like to have in our homes when we buy a new home, they even evolve. I think what broadcasters lose sight of, or people who make programming, is that don't worry about the technology part. Just create stuff people want to listen to. So you look at those stats, or the percentage of the numbers, and it's evident that Pandora or other online services or podcasts, netcasts, whatever you want to call them, get a lot of attention. Why? Because they're niche, they're focused, they have a certain reach because the people find something they like. They can now find things easily and grab it, whereas before you were forced to listen. Whether was it? It was scheduled radio and TV type stuff. You had to work on a schedule.
Yeah.
But I think that's what we as broadcasters. I mean, I've worked with a couple of folks in the last couple of weeks on a few things, and there were people still stuck in the idea that their audience has to follow what they tell them. And I'm like, that this music you're playing, I can just download and put on my iPod real easy, and I no longer have a reason to come to your station.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was one thing I remember. And I'll let you say, Rick Sklar, famous programmer. Anybody in the business will know that name. If not, look him up. Always said, everyone can play the same song in the market, but not everyone can fill the spaces between them with what people want to hear. And I'll remind you of 3 radio stations in New York City that were winning and enjoyed double-digit ratings that you'll never see again: WABC, WMCA, and WINS, where they were all music stations. And then when you look up those radio stations and the talent that was on there and the jocks that people remember, you might, for those who might know this name, Cousin Brucey,
Yeah.
Dan Ingram, Ron Lundy, Jack Spector, Dean Anthony, all these guys. And I actually got a chance to work with 2 of them, 2 of the 4, 3 of the 4, so it was fun. And you can tell that was what was the difference. They all played the same music. Look at the playlist, look them up. They all had the same songs. It was what they put between them. And I think that's what's missing today, except for if there are some stations that do very well, like B101 in Philadelphia and a few stations here in New York City, Z100 and a few others, that get that and know to put stuff in between to make it worthwhile for people to come back or stay. That's what I think is missing. And this report, this survey, pretty much shows that. That's just my opinion.
So the numbers that I read a moment ago, again, that's audio consumption on mobile devices. Owned music about half, internet-only audio like Pandora, Spotify. In other words, not radio stations streaming, but internet-only audio, about a third, and AM/FM only about 7%. And they combined if the mobile device had capability of receiving an AM or FM signal, that counts in the 7%, or streaming AM or FM, that counts in the 7%. And then podcasts about 4%. But so that looks kind of dismal, although I think it's what you'd expect from a mobile device, which aren't particularly friendly to AM/FM broadcasts. Of course, you can listen to an AM/FM stream, but we're still in this this discovery mode of discovering new things that aren't AM or FM. Now, reach, considering all devices, considering people, is a completely different animal. Because I said only 7% on a mobile. Hey, if you see somebody wearing earbuds, chances are 93% they're not listening to any radio station by any means, streaming or over the air. Chances are they're listening to music they own or internet-only audio, or a podcast or Sirius XM. Only 7% for AM/FM. Now, what about reach, though? Let's say that you're a national advertiser and you wanted to get a message out today to as many people as possible. Well, if you want to use audio, if you want it to be an audio message to as many people as possible, no matter what broad age group you are targeting, it turns out that broadcast will still get you by far the most people. The only age group that's even kind of sort of close is 13 to 17. But 75% of respondents in a fall 2014 share of ear study recorded at least some listening to AM/FM radio in their one-day listening diary. Now, remember, this is for just reach to people. And overall, 75% of people are reached in any given day. If you break it down into age categories, 25 to 54, that's my age category, 79% are reached. 55 plus, 77% are reached. And the kids, 13 to 24, 62% are reached. By the way, the 13 to 24 with the lowest reach by AM or FM, which is still 62%, those have, that you might guess, the highest reach via Pandora or Spotify. 23% for Pandora, 14% for Spotify. So I really think it's what you might expect. But boy, if somebody, it's interesting. If somebody's wearing some earbuds and they're listening to a mobile device, chances are very high they are not listening to any radio station.
True, but if you're a smart radio station, you should be creating uh, content that can be downloaded and grabbed and made perishable. That people know that if they don't grab it in the certain time window of that content, that it's no longer any good, and it just moves them away. And that's what I think that's what's happened. I mean, I worked at several stations that back in 1996, 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2005, 2006 tried to do things with streaming and internet podcasting, and nobody could seem to agree that it made sense to podcast or take snippets of what was on the air that was winning and getting reach and audience and recognition, and making little I'll call them little pods that could be downloaded for people to use on their commute to and from work.
Yeah.
As an And I was told, well, why would anybody want to download that while and it's no longer live? It's like that's not what they're doing. They're not getting it because it's live. They're getting it because it's a credible source. They want the information. But if you give it to them on a device that they can take with them, that now conforms to their morning commute, their morning chaos. Think about it. You get up in the morning, the first thing you do, maybe not, you put on the radio to listen to what the weather is and traffic if you have to drive, or mass transit. Or maybe you do TV, whatever the choice is. And then you're off and go to the bathroom. Then you do the kitchen. Then you're cooking breakfast. You're doing whatever you're doing. What if you knew that you can grab the latest headlines, whether it be video or audio or both, download it every night or first thing in the morning to your cradle device, grab it, put it in your briefcase or your purse, and off you go. And on the subway or on the commuter train or in a car, you're now getting what you want. I think that's a great idea. Nobody does it. Well, no broadcaster does it. And then when they do it, they bog it down with commercials and stupid stuff that confuses people. And it's like, what are you doing? Just go with the download numbers for credibility for your advertisers. Nobody does that. That's why this survey should be a wake up call. People should look at this and go, wait a minute, we're missing the boat here. The technology means bupkis. It doesn't matter whether earbuds are in there. I ride the subways here in New York City 5 days out of the week, every day. And yes, people got their earbuds in. You can hear what they're playing, which is, I would say invest in hearing aids at this point. But you can hear what they're playing, and most of the time I hear it's music. Occasionally I will hear spoken word, so I'm assuming it's something else other than music. But then there are those who watch videos on their phone, and I look down over their shoulder because I'm standing up there sitting, and it's either a game or it's video from Netflix or one of the other services, and they've downloaded video and watching a movie. So that tells you right there, they're making time in their busy day to watch something because that's what they want to see. So radio and TV should be doing the same thing, and we're not. I think that's where the mistake is, and that's why these numbers are showing what they show.
Just as a sidebar, I wonder how many people are watching a movie, part of a movie, or listening to some music because they're in the subway. They're not at work yet, or they've left work. They don't have to worry about work. They have a job that they may not want to think about when they're not at work. And it's just a little bit of escapism. Not that we haven't always done that, but if you wanted to hear the latest in NPR news, I use Beyond Pod as my podcast catcher, and twice a day it downloads NPR news headlines, and twice a day BBC, actually 4 times a day NPR, and so I easily have an NPR 5-minute newscast at my fingertips, which I think is pretty smart of NPR to do. Others could do that as well. But let's get back to chatting about the topical stuff, the stuff that you need to hear live for it to make sense, like the weather, the traffic, topical humor that's good for this morning. Maybe the morning crew is joking about something that somebody did or said the night before or the afternoon before. So they're taking the topical news from overnight, the day before, and they're talking about it. And that stuff's not going to be fresh very long. The morning show is a good time to poke fun at people, say things that are topical and interesting to get you going on your day. Of course, talk about the weather. And of course, that's stuff you can't get from internet streaming services like Pandora and Spotify or the music that you have. Of course, some people may not care about that stuff, but other people, that's the perishable stuff that only broadcasters can do, no matter whether it's over the air or via streaming. And it seems like broadcasters have to figure out how to make that perishable stuff even tastier, to make it that, man, I don't want to miss that. I don't want to miss a minute of it. I remember some years ago, a number of newspapers across the country were advertising their paper saying, if you haven't read it, it's still news. In other words, they were trying to increase the length of time. If it got to be afternoon and you hadn't read the morning paper, you wouldn't not read it because it was afternoon. They were saying if you haven't read it yet, it's still news. But I think broadcasters need to, first of all, make it really perishable and really good, so that apple tastes so delicious, but it won't be any good later on the day. But then they take, as you said, take little snippets and podcast stuff and somehow make that ingestible, digestible, consumable by folks. Hey, I didn't hear, what Rick and Bubba said this morning. So I wonder what they said this morning, and have an easy way to listen to that. Am I making sense?
Yes, absolutely. But that's what I'm talking about. See, part of the problem is the industry has leveraged itself so much that it can't afford to do anything that makes sense, because everything now is based on what it costs to do, and nobody can see an immediate return on investment. So therefore, we don't do these things. But the reality is, if you don't start doing it, you might as well just close up shop, sell the place, and cry wolf, cry and just cry. I mean, it's everything you just said makes total sense. You have an app on your phone that gets you what you want from two different services. Both of them are news services. News information services. Okay. Now, how many other places can you get that same stuff from in an easy way to do? On that list of percentages of people who are aware of various online audio service organizations like iHeartRadio, Pandora, and stuff, radio.com is down the list. Down near the middle, near the bottom of the list. Why is that? Radio.com is managed by a very large broadcast group that has probably some of the best programming in the world.
Hey, sorry, my little boy is here, and it's time for
there you
us
go.
to
There's the audience right there. There's the audience.
And I'm so, hey, look, there you are, buddy. You see yourself? Yeah, there you go. Sure, okay. You're listening and watching to This Week in Radio Tech, and I have just been joined here in studio by my son, Michael, who I have been with all day long because it's the 4th snow day in a row here in Nashville, Tennessee, and your school is closed, right, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to go back to school?
No, because I like staying home.
We have fun, don't we? Did we go sledding today?
Yeah, and I need to tell him something.
Okay, can you wait a minute and tell me something? Because I got to tell these folks about something.
What are you doing?
All right, go ahead and tell us quickly. Go ahead and tell us.
I have a new dino, and it's white, and he turns into a car.
Gotcha. Yeah, it is. What's it called? Do you know? It's a triceratops when it's a dino.
Yeah, and it's a car when it's a car.
Cool. And Mommy's not home yet, is she?
Yeah.
No. But she'll be home pretty soon. I just saw a message from her. She said she's on her way. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
And there's a and there and did you know when you started some shows about some racing go dinos on your computer?
Yeah, I know. We saw that. Hey, I got to do a commercial and get back to it. Would you like to go back upstairs?
No, I like staying with you better.
Oh, that's awful good.
But I
All
have
right.
to get something before
Okay.
I come back down.
All right, you do that. I'm going to tell you folks about one of our sponsors, and that is Omnia and the new Omnia 7 audio processor. Folks have been waiting for this processor for a while, and it's here, and it's shipping, and it's amazing. One thing that's amazing is the price. If I've got my facts straight, and I hope I do, the base Omnia 7 without a couple of features is under $6,000 US. It is just amazing. This processor, another processor designed with algorithms designed by Leif Clayson, and it has undo technology, which is just amazing. You want this. If you're playing audio that I'm telling you isn't classical music, if you're playing or jazz, if you're playing any processed audio at all from any, whether it's country, CHR, rap, hip hop, rock and roll, it may have been squashed pretty good by the record producers. And this may work okay for non-broadcast applications, but man, it's great to undo that clipping that gets onto CDs. And that is exactly one thing that the Omnia 7 does. It removes distortion and mathematically recreates the peaks that are sliced from the day's poorly mastered contemporary music. It restores life, brilliance, and dynamic range to any type of music that's suffering from that. There's also an exclusive psychoacoustic controlled distortion mask clipper. What? That's a mouthful. Say it again here. A psychoacoustic controlled distortion mask clipper. It analyzes and masks distortion perceptible to the human ear, leaving only clean and clear audio. And a complete toolbox of sophisticated Omnia sound shaping technologies gives you power to analyze and refine that signature sound using a variety of sonic tools, and ranging from real-time analyzers to oscilloscopes, FFTs, and more. Some of the other features that are inside the box, it has a wet voice detector. It detects speech, even on top of music, for the clearest possible voice quality. Because, sometimes we need to process voice a little differently than music for the best of both worlds. It has a built-in speaker calibration tool. How about that? A multi-band downward expansion, which is source noise reduction, and program-dependent 2 to 5 band multi-band AGCs and limiters, depending on what preset that you're choosing. Plus, it has HTTP push support for automation, such as dynamic RDS and streaming song titles with preset recall. You can buy an option to do RDS generation in this box, in the Omnia 7. There's Michael. He's back with us. Hey, buddy. So I want you to check it out. I want you to go to the Telos Alliance website, telosalliance.com, and go to the Omnia and click on the Omnia 7. And you'll read all about the Omnia 7 processor. There's a manual, there's a brochure, and pretty soon we're going to have a video on the website to show you some of the features that are built in to the Omnia 7. So it's intended, just, if you know Leif Clayson and you're familiar with the Omnia 9 or any other of Leif's other projects, then you got to know the Omnia 7 is going to be right up there in terms of quality, loudness, cleanliness, and making sure your station sounds just fantastic. So thanks a lot to Omnia and the Omnia 7. Now shipping. Contact your nearest dealer for a quote and a ship date for you. All right, Chris, we're back on This Week in Radio Tech. Chris, I'd like to, is anything else you want to pick up from the last subject matter, or can we move on to online public files?
Let's go to online public files for $200.
All right. Well, deadlines have been set for public comments to be filed with the FCC regarding extending the Commission's online public file rules to broadcast and to satellite radio, cable, and satellite TV. Now, right now, they apply to television broadcasters. Chris, talk to us about online public files and what that means for radio broadcasters, what that means for the public, and why we should or shouldn't go this direction.
Well, let's see. The public file was a mechanism instituted back in the early days of communications to allow the public to inspect the public airwaves licenses that were being issued. And in that public file were various things from the license, proper license application, all the information involved there, the technical parameters of the station, whether it be AM, FM, or TV, and then the public file at one time used to have, it used to have the various programming elements that the radio station, TV station participated in. So whether it was political, national, political, local, or state, community services, later on equal opportunity employment forms. So basically the idea behind it was to allow the public, you and I, and any of us who fund through taxes and other things, the possibility of communication, to see what's going on. Basically like a checks and balances, somewhat we'd call today probably transparency. Over time, it's become a burden. Over time, it's become something of a mystery. It is like, does the public file really need this anymore? Why does anybody bother with it? Nobody, they do the infamous, well, according to our survey, in the 16 years we've been in this building, nobody's ever called for the public file. That's well and good, but that's the point behind it. It has to be available just for that day. It doesn't have to have been accessed 6,000 times. So I think moving to a online public file approach, I think makes sense. I'm not sure if it'll be implemented or applied properly, but I think it makes sense. It makes it easier for people to check up on broadcasters, which is probably why a lot of broadcasters may sort of shun it. But I think it's a good idea, and I think the hardest part's going to be I think the definition of what goes in it lately, what's what's required, how to access it, and how to manage it. Because nowadays, I think everything online is easily corrupted or data breaches, whatever you want to call it. So I think that's where a lot of people are going to be a little pushed back.
I see a real opportunity here for this actually to be pretty easy and effective. And I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the FCC's proposed rules here. On the one hand, if the FCC provided the web host, if they provided the infrastructure so that from any radio station from your website, you could aim it at what you've uploaded to the FCC servers. That would be one method. I doubt that would happen. It doesn't seem the way that we would do things in the U.S. Although on the other hand, it is kind of an unfunded mandate, right? FCC says you must do this. It's kind of technical. You might have to hire somebody, and but you have to make your public file available this way. So the FCC could provide the infrastructure for you to make it happen. On the other hand, this is a perfect opportunity for a third-party company to say, hey, don't venture into that complicated world of, website and presentation and PDFs and all that kind of stuff. Pay us $59 a month, and we'll, provide web space. We'll provide, the structure of the site within a site, if you will. And you would just, upload your stuff. You'd follow the directions. It would end up being pretty easy. And your radio station website, if you have one, would simply point to, subframes, iframes to this third party company that was doing the hosting for you. And it was all set out exactly like the FCC wants it to be. And you pay them some money and you're done. It seems like it could be an opportunity to satisfy what the FCC wants, make your public file accessible to the public, and make it easy for the broadcaster if they want to do that. Does that sound like it could be a solution, an opportunity?
That's an opportunity, absolutely an opportunity. It's one of many solutions that could be done. It doesn't take much to do this kind of thing because you remember the public file is somewhat static. There's only a few portions of it that you have to update quarterly and maybe weekly if there's certain things being added, or you get letters from the audience and stuff, things like that. But for the most part, it's not terribly difficult to do. But it's just like you say, it's an unfunded mandate. It's an approach. It's like, well, you have to do this, but the onus is on you to comply. Just like when the rules changed and they said you no longer had to keep transmitter logs. However, the caveat was, if an FCC inspector showed up at your doorstep and you couldn't prove the last time you were in tolerance of your technical parameters, and they look at you and say, well, from what we can see, you've been out of tolerance for 6 months, you're going to get fined because you can't prove otherwise. Those are the little things you got to watch. Those are the gotchas, So the same thing could happen here with the public file. They could say, well, you don't have to keep it physically in the building in a folder anymore. You could do it online. However, you make sure everything is in order, because the day comes and we inspect and we don't see something. You can't say you didn't know.
I'm terribly sorry I didn't actually read the second paragraph of this article. I'm looking at an article by Leslie Stimson on Radio World Online, and now I'm better informed. In 2012, the Commission adopted online public file rules for broadcast television stations, and it required them to post public file documents to a central FCC-hosted online database rather than maintaining the files locally at their main studios. Now that television broadcasters have completed their transition to an online file, the Commission wants to expand that requirement to other media categories. So the goal is improve public access to public inspection files and especially political advertising documents, according to the Commission. So I'm better informed. The Commission already provides hosting for TV stations. If this article is correct, I don't have any reason to believe that it's not. So I guess I kind of don't get. Okay, what's the problem with doing this? Now, hey, my own opinion is, why do we need a public file anyway? Really? Is there a public file for a newspaper when a political candidate spends money with a newspaper? Is there a public file for the newspaper as to how much they spent? I don't think there is.
No.
Could be misinformed, but I don't think there is. Why does a broadcaster have to have it? Well, because it's the public airwaves. So I'm not in favor of the whole notion of the public file anyway. But if we have to have it, and putting it online would eliminate us having to have it as a physical presence, then I'm all for it. You scan your documents, upload them, or hopefully maybe just get them from the FCC in PDF form, the ones that are from the FCC, and store them online. Point your website to there when somebody click on public file, and you're taken to the FCC hosted area. And then, as you mentioned, the local items, you scan those in, type them in, PDF them in, whatever it is, and you upload those, and you're done. You don't have to deal with pesky customers coming in the door wanting to look at your public file, which is usually just not people with a truly legitimate purpose anyway. They're wanting to, they have some complaint about the broadcast, and they want to see if they can, find out whatever they can about them. So,
Well, this will make it easier now.
yeah.
They can do it from the comfort of their home.
That's right. That's right. So I don't know. I'm, not a big public file proponent, but hey, if we got to do it, then if FCC host the space and let us upload the right stuff and be done with it. It's a little bit like EAS. If an EAS box meets the commission's requirements, no matter how awful it is otherwise, then it's legal and okay, it's there. All right. Any further thoughts on that issue, Chris?
No. I think I thought there was some talk that the radio, that the FCC was changing their mind about radio doing the central server, but I guess I'm mistaken.
I don't know. That article just said what radio is. Here we are talking about things about which we're uninformed. And, the truth may be pretty cool, or it may be just awful.
Well, as everything with the FCC, at times you get one story and the notice proposed rulemaking changes, and you don't get the update, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, there's a new version. So, but I remember there was some talk of changes being made, but I guess they failed. They just abandoned that idea altogether. Okay, that's cool.
So I want to turn our attention now. We've talked about these three news items here lately, and if there's any other news items you want to chat about, great. But I'd like to turn our attention to a good part of the U.S. Is seeing some really, really cold weather. I mean, here in Nashville, Tennessee, overnight last night, it got down to, depends on whose thermometer you believe, it got down to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 degrees or so. I think the lowest I showed here at Shea Harnack was about 6 degrees. And that's cold. I was sitting in my office last night, and I kept hearing outside, a sound like a bang, somewhere between a bang and a thud. And I think I couldn't see anything falling off the house. I don't think any ice was melting and falling off the roof because it was really cold. That happened during the day today. But I think that the deck attached to our house for the entire length of the house may have been contracting a bit. And was, I was hearing, shifts of timber behind lag bolts. I don't know. I'm not sure what I was hearing, but it had to do with a really cold temperature. And my point is that, hey, as broadcasters, we've got antennas up in the air. In fact, my stations in Mississippi, one of them has a transmitter that will not fold back. It's not designed into it. It'll only shut off. And so because of some unfortunate ways that we had to hook things up, we were off the air for quite a few hours. Another station of ours does have a transmitter that folds back, and we were able to stay on the air, but of course it greatly reduced power. Now that's just your standard ice on the antenna kind of deal. And in Mississippi, you just don't have enough icing to where it's worthwhile to spend money on heaters or radomes if you can help it, especially if you're a small town broadcaster. So, Chris, I'm thinking about super, super cold weather like this. Man, what are some of the things that we have to look out for at our transmitter sites or at our studio? Of course, one thing that really does come to mind is any water system that you may have. If you've got any running water at a transmitter site or in a studio, maybe in a penthouse on the roof, you've got some satellite dishes, maybe there's a sink or a bathroom up there, and any place where it's going to get cold, that's going to be a real factor. What comes to mind for you, though, when we're looking at temperatures that are hovering around zero?
First thing I would check is my generator or generators, if there's more than one, fuel tanks, fuel supply lines, their exposure to the elements, if any, all the fluids involved, battery fluids. If the generator is housed outside the building or it's inside. If it's inside the building, is the room that the generator is in somewhat, above 60 degrees or at least 55, 60 degrees, where that's nominal. Those are the first things I check. Second thing I check is I go out to the poles, utility poles, and look to see if there's any ice forming along the cables, along the pole itself, ground level. Basically, I would look for things that would take me off the air or cause me to switch to my backup systems. Because in this kind of weather, as you pointed out, your deck is making noises because of contraction. Could be the house settling, the ground is contracting, the ground is shrinking, foundation is shifting. I mean, things like that. I have seen in working up in Connecticut, northern Connecticut, where we have ice conditions were normal during the winter. We had ice forming on power lines. That was annoying because invariably they'd go out and the pole transformer would explode and we'd be on generator for 3 or 4 days. It was almost predictable. But there were times we would find ice building up on the guy anchors, just on the wires, and then start sliding down the wire. And if you see some places up north, in cold environments, they have these ice breaking. They look like little pyramid-looking clamp-on metal.
Yeah.
That's for breaking the ice as it slides down the guy wire.
This is a great point.
Right down at the ankle.
Yeah, you get all this way. Well, if you get freezing rain, you get precipitation that freezes on the guy wires. And hey, here in the Mid-South in Tennessee, we had a ton of freezing rain. Comes down as wet precipitation, but it's just barely warm enough. And as soon as it hits something that is below freezing, heat is transferred, and the freezing rain, which is really cold, freezes. And this is usually what gets on your antennas, your tower, and your guy wires. So on the guy wires, if you have all this ice on there, and then a few days later, the sun comes out enough, it gets warm enough to melt that ice, man, it doesn't just fall off the guy wire right then. It comes sliding down the guy wire, building up a lot of kinetic energy. It's heavy, it's water, it's frozen, it's heavy, and it can get moving fast. So if that comes down and hits, let's say it's an AM tower and hits an insulator, well, it can just break that insulator right in two. And then you've lost an insulator. And if it can come down and it can hit what's the word I'm looking for? A turnbuckle. It can hit a turnbuckle and mess that up. It can bend things. It can bend up the safety wires that may be going through the turnbuckles. So yeah, I forgot about those icebreakers. A little cone-shaped device that's clamped on. Usually just at the bottom or at several places along the guy wire. I've seen them at the bottom. It's
been a long time, but I think it's depending on the region, depending on the type of weather conditions. I saw pictures once where they had them staggered. Well, it was 1,000-foot towers. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it depends on the tower height and the angle of the guys. The other thing to look for, which is common practice in any icing condition, is in most places you'll see communication shacks have ice bridges that are put above the structure, that when ice falls from a tower structure or a building, it hits that rather than the actual equipment. Now, odds are you're probably a facility like, say, where you are in Tennessee, where you normally don't get icing on a regular basis. So you probably wouldn't have ice bridges or any kind of ice protection for the outside stuff. Say a coupler, your FM coupler to an AM tower, or maybe the cable gets swept off the tower at a 90-degree angle and is exposed. That can easily get hit by ice and puncture.
Sure.
So the best thing to do is plan on visiting your transmitter site at the first thaw. And this way, at least you go out and look for, this is the great thing, telltale signs of fallen ice. Make sure you're wearing a hard hat or something when you go out there. I mean, I know it's...
No kidding.
But I worked at a place, we had a 800-foot tower, and right after an ice storm we went out there with hard hats, thank goodness, and you would hear these things come down and go plunk, plunk. I mean, it sounded like a war movie. You hear this little whistling, and then it was like a plunk, and you're like, oh, God. It was ice. It was ice, length 2-3 inches of ice. So at least look around, and if you start to see it, make notes of where it's you're observing it, and keep an eye out, because if your cables are exposed, your air conditioning units on the rooftop of your building, punctures through the grill, the building temperature is going to change. These are things to look for. You can't do much about it because if you normally don't have ice conditions like we've had this year, then you just got to be prepared. Those are the things I look for at the transit site.
Your warning about ice is really appropriate, and I'm the kind of guy I like to relate something in stories that provide some teachable moments, and I've got a little story here that provides a ton of teachable moments. It's all the things that I did wrong. Okay. In the Mid-South around Memphis, Tennessee, and in Arkansas and south into Mississippi, back in 1994, I believe it was, I want to say February, maybe early March of 94, there was an ice storm, and it wiped out, well, in parts of Mississippi, anything more than 40 feet tall was broken over. I mean, long-distance transmission lines, all down. The medium voltage transmission lines, down highways, gone, bent over, broken over. Towers, broadcast towers, hundreds of them down, broadcast cellular, all that kind of stuff. Two-way towers. And I was living in Memphis, and I was the engineer for our stations in Cleveland, Mississippi. And that tower amazingly didn't fall down. It kind of bent up like an S, And we stayed on the air with a 10-watt exciter, and then we got a bigger generator and got the transmitter back on the air. But also, I was the engineer for a station licensed to Osceola, Arkansas, and it was hitting Memphis. I guess it had I guess it was the moniker Rock 98 at the time. So anyway, I had to go up to the transmitter site because it was off the air. Obviously, the power was out there as it was over a huge area, but we had a generator. We had a big honking generator, but it wasn't on. And of course, it worked every time we tested it, but it didn't work this time. So I had to drive in my Nissan 300ZX. That's all I had. About 25 miles up, absolutely ice covered. And I'm just 2-3 inches of solid ice on the interstates. Almost nobody else on the interstate. Jackknifed rigs here and there, cars off here and there, very few other cars actually moving, which made it great for me. Somehow I made it all the way to Frenchman's Bayou, Arkansas, and got there. Here's where I started doing things really wrong. First of all, I parked the car too close to the building. Luckily, no ice hit my car. And when I realized that chunks of ice were hurtling down from 1,200 feet up and reaching terminal velocity before they hit the ground, you'd hear them like that. Oh my gosh. I better back my car out. So I got in the car and backed it out to the front of the driveway, hopefully far away from the ice. That was mistake number one. Mistake number two, there was no ice bridge or ice shield above the metal building that housed the transmitters, the main and backup transmitters. And so by the time the ice storm was over and by the time all this ice was done falling off the tower, a few days later, we assessed the damage, and there were now holes in the building and plenty of dents, big dents in the metal roof. So ice bridge became, a priority that summer to get built. The fuel tank, and we supposedly we had a professional company servicing the generator, but I'm not sure that they were paid to pay attention to the fuel and whatever additives you need to put in the fuel, the diesel fuel, to keep it from gelling up. And so the problem was the day tank was empty, and the line between the big tank and the day tank was apparently the fuel couldn't pass. So I don't know how dumb or smart this was, but the only solution I had at the moment was to take a little propane torch and run it along carefully, always moving along the fuel line between the storage tank and the day tank. And that worked. After maybe an hour of doing that, and it was probably a 20-foot worth of line that ran across the concrete slab. After doing that for a while, sure enough, we started getting fuel moving. Seems like I had to do some pumping. So I'm there. That's right. I had a manual pump. It's got the dip tube that goes down, and then a little thing that you crank, and a hose that went over the day tank as well. So I got the day tank primed. I got the station back on the air that way by transferring fuel with this, and then later on we got the fuel line ungelled, and so then finally the generator would start, and got the station back on the air that way. But I didn't have a hard hat. That's the next lesson of stupidity. I didn't have a coat that was probably heavy enough. And so I got hit in the back with a chunk of ice. Now, I'd hate to think that if it hit me in the head, it might have knocked me out. But I got hit in the back with a chunk of ice that it didn't knock me down, but it came close. Probably, I'm going to guess it had to be 6, 7, 8 pounds of ice traveling at had to be over 100 miles an hour by the time it fell off the tower and hit me. Oh, my goodness. How many things did I do wrong there, Chris?
Well, it's not that you did it wrong. You just weren't properly informed. That's all. That's part of the training process, the life lessons. But, I worked at a site where I was new. I, just in the business as a youth, as a mere cub, whatever you want to call it. And I made some doozy mistakes similar to that you spoke about, parking the car in the wrong place during bad weather and finding, going down to the base of the tower, trying to figure out a problem and realizing there's an electrical storm coming on the horizon. I'm like, oh, wow, this is a lightning rod, isn't it? It's 600 feet. Maybe I should pack my bag and back up to the building. Things like that. You learn quickly and you survive them. You realize, okay, there's a reason why I didn't get hurt. At least you hope. And that's why I always do a lot of research and try to figure out things. But when weather like this occurs, and tomorrow morning, New York City is supposed to have a record-breaking 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Tonight it's supposed to be, I think, somewhere around 7 or 5 degrees Fahrenheit, with the wind chills dropping down as low as minus 20 degrees. So it's going to be the next 24 hours is going to be very chilling, bone chilling, or as I like to say, debilitating cold. It'll be debilitating cold weather. Yeah. But for your diesel question with the blowtorch or the propane torch, the flash point on diesel is lower than gasoline, so you probably lucked out and you just weren't at the flash point temperature for diesel because of the weather conditions and everything else. So you survived that. But next time, what do you call it? Be warned.
Well, I kept get the electrical wrap tape, to warm it up that way, and I knew to keep the torch moving. I mean, I didn't leave it in any one spot at all. Just kept that torch moving, and I put my hand on the pipe, which was really cold, and I just wanted to warm it up to who knows what, maybe 30, 40 degrees, something like that. So anyway,
well,
it all came out.
It came out. You came out okay. You survived. You're still here with us. This is good.
I did.
But according to I just looked it up. The flash point for diesel is 140 degrees versus minus 35 degrees for gasoline. So you were lucky. You because you kept the flame moving, the heat source was moving. You never got a chance to reach 140 degrees in one spot.
Right. And I sure didn't want to do that. Getting down to 8 degrees overnight tonight here in Nashville, but that's actually warmer than last night. Hey, our show is brought to you in part by the folks at Axia and the Axia Pathfinder software. I want to talk to you for just a minute about this, because this is so cool. Chris Tarr, I wish he could have made it on the show today. Chris Tarr just gave a seminar about routing audio over IP using Axia Pathfinder software. What is Pathfinder? What does this do? Well, if you have an Axia system, an audio over IP system, and you want to make changes in routing based on any number of events, commands, push a button, contact closure comes in, time of day, and if you want to be able to monitor a system with Pathfinder, you can choose any point in the system and monitor its audio level and set up alarms if audio goes away. It's just amazing the logic that you can build in to an Axia Pathfinder system. So what is Pathfinder? Pathfinder is software that runs on a Windows machine. It can be Windows 7 or Windows Server. So if you have a mission critical operation, probably ought to be Windows Server. And you can run it in a clustered server. So if you really have a mission critical operation, and there are plenty of huge broadcasters and network operations who are doing this right now, running Pathfinder on redundant clustered servers, and they monitor each other. So if one dies, the other one just picks up right there in a thousandth of a second. Bam, it's ready to go. And for example, this is used there's a big network facility in New York State where literally hundreds of radio programs are ingested and sent hither and yon, some up to satellite, others distributed other ways. And Axia Pathfinder monitors the whole system, monitors every single contact closure that comes into the system and regenerates it for whatever method of distribution that it's going out to, checks for presence of audio repeatedly at all the places that it needs to. It's just amazing what this software can do, and it can do thousands of operations in half a second. If you need to switch a whole bunch of things real fast. It's just quite amazing. It's the kind of software that actually has probably a pretty good learning curve, but luckily the folks at Axia do regular seminars. There's videos online about it, and there's lots of tech tips, and our tech support people at Axia are ready to help you with it as well. So if you need something that's going to do a lot of jobs, whether they're a lot of little jobs, even if it's something as little as, hey, I need to push a button and make my mic show up on a speaker somewhere. If usually that's a function that's built into the console, into an Axia audio console. But if it's a feature that's not really having to do with an input on the console, if it's kind of like an external function, man, Pathfinder can just do that. Hey, I got involved with a beautiful studio here in Nashville for America's Morning Show. that is distributed to 100 or so radio stations around the country. And they needed some pretty interesting routing to go on when they would push a button to talk to different sets of talent, to have a squawk box sound on the air, kind of a Charlie Brown teacher, you know, wah, 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 have that appear on the air. And so many of these functions we do in real time using Pathfinder. We touch a button, Pathfinder makes some changes. We let go of the button, Pathfinder makes some changes. If you need to light up buttons with different colors and have them have text that changes on command when you do something, that's Pathfinder doing all that. I want you to check it out at the Axia website. You can go to axiaaudio.com. That'll take you to the TELUS Alliance website, and you can click Axia from there. Or just go to the TELUS Alliance website, telusalliance.com, and look at Axia and check out Axia Pathfinder. Just amazing software, what it will do, and it will solve just all the things we used to build little blue boxes for, bud boxes. You don't have to do that anymore at all, ever. Use Pathfinder to affect all the things you need to do around a broadcast facility. It is just amazing. And hey, maybe next time we'll get Chris Tarr on here to tell you a bit more about what he does with it at his facilities. All right, Chris Tobin, thanks for being with us on This Week in Radio Tech. Any parting words for us? Hello, Chris Tobin. Are you there?
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Any parting words? We got to go.
Yes, we do. All I can say is Pathfinder was a great piece of software I worked with when I was using the Axia system, and we made it do lots of funky stuff. And it was more flexible than I thought it could be, and it was fun. So I'm assuming today it's even better than it was when I had it.
You know, I think the thing they've done to make Pathfinder better over time is more graphical. If you want to build a sequence of functions, there's no cryptic commands to learn, but there's more graphical help to help you set up complex functions. So it's gotten easier and easier to use over the years. Hey, it was introduced, I don't know, almost 10 years ago, Pathfinder was. So it's a very mature product now, and a lot of facilities, basically depend on it. So that's why it's running in clustered servers. So a server can go down and you still got all the functionality. Yeah.
I will say the one thing I found Pathfinder to be handy with, and we definitely got everybody thinking hard at Axia, was in the operation that I was using it, we had to have the on button press a second time, and in the mechanical world, you could always take an extra spare contacts off the bottom of the switch and use that for triggering stuff. But in the software-defined world, that doesn't exactly exist. So we had to actually find the packet ID for the button when it pressed on and use that to be sniffed out by Pathfinder to trigger an action. It was something that nobody could. It was like, wait a minute, why would you want to hit the button twice? Well, that's how our format works. You don't understand. We're taking a mechanical world and now making it software-defined. So that was what, back in, oh gosh, it had to be like 8 years ago. So yeah, we were doing it with I'll use the command line approach.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for your experience with Pathfinder, and it is just absolutely amazing. And as I said, the folks at Telos and support, they're here to help you out to get you up that learning curve and figure out how to make it work really well and really slick. Coming up on future shows, Patrick Parks, engineer from Texas, will be here. Bob Mabin with some really cool stories from recent and back when radio was. Also on March the 5th, we're thinking about doing the show live from Orlando. We're going to have an SBE meeting in Orlando, Florida, and I'll be doing that meeting, and we may just make the show the SBE meeting. Should be interesting. Chris Tobin, I'll need you along to just interrupt and do the commercials, because I'll be doing the SBE meeting. Thanks to Andrew Zarian. Yeah, I'm glad you can agree to do it. And here I asked you here on the air. Hey, Andrew Zarian, thanks for producing the show This Week in Radio Tech. Watch the other shows on the GFQ network. They got all kinds of things that are be of interest to you, including What the Tech and others. Hey, Andrew, is there any particular show you want to plug right now?
What the Tech is perfect.
Yeah. Paul Thurrott and you complaining about what?
Everything with technology.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? All right, guys, we'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye, everybody.